Clinical Conversations. Jason, we got ourselves side by side right now, and we are going to showcase a video that we started last week, but I thought we were getting right to the real science of it, the real clinical aspects. This is with our friend Dr. Allison Evans over at Fringe. They're doing some super interesting things in the CBD space to start, and they intend on expanding out from that as well to really human performance. So I wanted to take a moment, hop back into her video, and then you and I'll hop back on. We'll kind of recap what we see and where we think that the business of CBD is going. So without further ado, here is Dr. Allison Evans.
And this really has been an interesting and very trying time for us as a population, because some of these things are incredibly unavoidable in modern day living. And so these are things that reduce those endocannabinoids in our body. So we now know we have these compounds that fluctuate, that we produce on demand as needed, but we also know that they can become very depleted over time with modern day living. And so I love this quote, which is modulating endocannabinoid system activity may have therapeutic potential in almost all diseases affecting humans. That's a massive statement. We don't make broad sweeping statements like that typically in medicine ever. And it's probably the most exciting aspect of being in the industry we are in right now and having an education platform in which we know so little about something we care so much about. So on our list, our very first fringe factor that we are going to tackle is called plants are medicine. That is, for us, our most important compound to start with. And when we started talking about this a couple years ago and really started thinking about the hemp industry and the cannabis industry, I think at that time we had no idea the impact that we would be having today in as we near towards the end of 2021. So plants definitely can change how we care for ourselves and each other. And we are focusing on one of the oldest, if not the oldest, plants known to humankind, a plant that we have literally evolved with since the dawn of time, and that is the hemp plant. And it is definitely a massive part of our history, dating, the dates go 5,000 BC, but it really probably is upwards of 10 to 12,000 years that humans and hemp have coexisted in their environment together. The past 100 years, which is a tiny little blip in the history of humankind, we have had very little access to hemp and cannabis due to regulatory restrictions on studying the plant, using the plant, and essentially learning about the plant. And as those restrictions have been lifted in just the past couple of years, it has been an explosive industry. So the hemp plant is from a family of plants called Cannabis sativa. And I think the nomenclature in the cannabis industry gets confusing very quickly. The hemp plant and cannabis are actually from the same plant. It's just the chemical compound makeup of the plant that give it its different names. So hopefully we'll be able to clear that up for you. There is something inside of the hemp plant that actually makes it fascinatingly related to that endocannabinoid system. And that is that inside of the hemp plant, there are compounds called phytocannabinoids. So unlike endo, in which we make them in our own bodies, phytocannabinoids are made by plants, but they interact with that very same endocannabinoidome or ECS system in our body and are an amazing thing that we can add into our system to boost the tone of that ECS system or those endocannabinoids. So two compounds found in the hemp plant are CBD and THC. Those are called major cannabinoids because they're found in the largest quantities. When it comes to giving a nomenclature for the rest of the day, I will mainly talk about hemp being a plant that is 0.3% less or less THC and predominantly CBD. It also has hundreds of other compounds inside of the plant. When I speak of cannabis, The more slang term is marijuana. We won't use that. We will use the term cannabis. But typically, if I'm speaking of cannabis, I'm speaking of a plant that is in higher concentrations of THC. Cannabis right now is not federally legal, and hemp is federally legal. So the 2018 Farm Bill allowed that hemp, which is cannabis with 0.3% or less THC, can be used around the country industrially, medicinally, nutritionally, you name it. So that hopefully helps everyone understand the difference in those compounds. This is one of my favorite statements about the hemp plant, is that it is a neglected pharmacologic treasure trove, which is a mouthful. But it's full of all these compounds that we have not been able to study for 100 years, but had been using medicinally for 10,000 years prior to that. And so there's 120 or so cannabinoids, CBD and THC being the most predominant, but there's a lot more. There's over 200 terpenes, which are the compounds that give plants their smells and tastes. And then there's over 20 flavonoids in the hemp plant, which is what gives all sorts of plants and fruits and vegetables their vibrant colors. All of them have health benefits. All are being studied. And I think we can pretty much guarantee that every year we'll be teaching you about all sorts of different cannabinoids and what we're learning. I'm focusing this talk today on CBD. And in general, Fringe as a company and the people on the team at Fringe, we're focused on talking about CBD. It's the predominant compound inside of the hemp plant. It is legal in all 50 states to be using nutritionally, supplementing as medicine. It, for us, has so many health benefits that it's such a great area to pause and focus on the one cannabinoid in the plant that is so dominant and has remained so dominant in the plant through years of breeding and farming practices. So this is our checklist. At the end of this talk today, we should be able to answer these questions. Why use CBD? How is it tested? What type of product should you use? When do you take those products? How much should you take? And at the end of the day, what are you buying? And that to me is the checklist for a health professional in bringing a CBD product into their clinic. And it also is the checklist for your patients and your consumers. They should have answers to these questions from their healthcare professional so they know what they're getting as well. So let's talk about why CBD. 3 categories. It is incredibly clinically relevant to what we see as healthcare practitioners in our clinics every day. It's incredibly safe and incredibly effective. So clinically relevant, it should not surprise you that those 3 categories of pain, mental health, and sleep are going to be what we focus on. They are the things that affect the most people worldwide. And they also are a huge opportunity for us to change the story in these becoming incredibly isolated, medicated approaches to care to being something in which we look at the whole person and be able to make a really significant impact on those 3 categories. So when it comes to talking about CBD being clinically relevant, this is some information from our scientific director. It's funny, Genevieve right now, she has been a researcher for 20 years. She is the scientific director for Fringe. And this is a huge passion of hers to be able to sift through all the science and bring an active healthcare provider the information that they need to explain it to their patients. And I quote her often when she says that this is an insanely compelling industry, but also very complex. And so being able to sift through the information and for her to summarize that CBD affects at least 65 molecular targets in our bodies is kind of an overwhelming statement. But it does play an integral role in how we balance all of those other systems inside of our body and essentially how we reach a more balanced state of wellness inside of our bodies as well. CBD does interact with our body's ECS system, and we know that that system has far-reaching effects on our overall health. We need to recognize the fact that CBD having over 65 molecular targets, including receptors, enzymes, ion channels, that is going to be information that we will need to bring to you in digestible bits as we learn more about how it actually works. And our goal is to bring you information in which we separate out bodily systems that we're used to learning: immune system, neurological system, digestive system, respiratory, and bring to you an understanding of how CBD helps in each of those categories. So we look forward to bringing that information to you in the future. The more we learn, the more we realize that this story has really just begun. I think this is my favorite part of the CBD industry right now, and maybe this is my like for being on the fringe of a topic in an industry, which is that in the CBD industry, we have about 10,000 years of clinical experience, patient experience and preferences, and just a few years of research and evidence. Though the experience is far outweighing the evidence at this point. But evidence-based medicine is not just research. It is what is of value to the patient, what is the clinician experiencing with the people they are treating, and then what is the evidence that supports what we are actually, learning in this industry. So we have 10,000 or so years of people using the hemp plant medicinally. And now it's our time to catch up with the research.
All right, Jason, that was Dr. Allison Evans at Fringe, and we're going to feature quite a few videos from Fringe over the coming weeks and months because they're just putting out such fantastic content. We're going to mix in some other clinical conversations for sure, but my take-home message from that, Jason, is it is just shocking to me about how little we know about something that's been around for basically ever. And I think one of the things that they're doing a fantastic job of is exploring, and continuing to say, hey, here's what we see today. It might be different tomorrow or next week, but here's what we know, and here's how we might be able to apply this to, better health. And I know a specific passion of theirs is in and around the chronic pain issues, et cetera. But what was maybe a take-home message for you on today's clinical conversation?
The take home from me these days is that, ironically, I get emails now on a regular basis. I just saw a new article about a restaurant in New York City that was one of the most famous restaurants, 11 Madison, is now recently gone all plant-based. And there's just, you kind of can't turn on the television today without seeing the words plant-based. And it's a conversation going on everywhere. So, we present these clinical conversations with a variety of intentions. And I know sometimes people may watch and go, well, we're chiropractors. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be adjusting. And why are you teaching this stuff? And so let's answer that question. The reason we're teaching that stuff is for several reasons. One, you should be knowledgeable about what is being talked about, especially what's trending in the world right now. And plant-based conversations, whether it's plant-based food, plant-based medicine, there's even plant-based fabrics and all kinds of different things that are coming out now these days. Being aware of the conversations that are in your community's minds, above and beyond the C word and all the other insanity going on. Plant-based is a conversation going on. Plant-based medicine, of course, is something that is trending significantly. So I think it's great for our docs. Again, this is the Smart Chiropractor show. The whole goal is for smart chiropractors to get smarter. And that doesn't mean that you have to use it. It doesn't mean you have to recommend it. It doesn't mean you have to use it in your practice. It means that you should be interested in learning about these types of things. So at the very least, I think it's great to stay well informed. I didn't know that it had been around that long, used that long. And I watched a movie not long ago called Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. Same kind of idea, the miraculousness of how long humans have been engaged in interacting with this plant world, whether it's mushrooms or cannabis or whatever it may be, is truly mind-boggling. You almost can't even kind of calculate it and figure it out. And you almost have to ask yourself, why don't we know more about it these days? But I guess, maybe the Rockefellers and the Flexner Report and the pharmaceutical industry might have something to do with us not hearing about all that. But I love what Allison's doing. I love the take that she's got. The name Fringe, I think, says, attracts crazies like me and us. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I think she's doing a phenomenal job. And I hope chiropractors are learning. And for those of you that do think it's a good idea, there's lots of options out there. There's a lot of confusion about product, which to use, which not to use, why to use it. Fringe is a very unique approach to CBD, which I think is really cool. So I think it was, a great share session, and thanks for bringing it to us.
My pleasure. That's going to wrap up Clinical Conversations for this week. Hey, if you like that video, be sure to subscribe to the Smart Chiropractor. We are posting videos on how you can market your chiropractic practice in a way that teach and invites consistently. We have found that is the magic formula to big time growth. So if you like this video, be sure to comment down below, smash that subscribe button, or visit us at thesmartchiropractor.com.